All right, everyone, welcome to Microeconomics. This is the Tech Live session number one. My name is John Kessler, and I'm going to be your professor for this 6-week session. It's a pleasure to be working with you all. Wanted to start with just a little introduction of myself before we jump into the economics content so that you get to know me a little bit and hopefully feel a little more comfortable reaching out to me if you have any questions or anything as the semester progresses. That being said, I'm going to type in the chat here and I'm going to give you my cell phone number. So hopefully you can see that in the recording. That way you can text me or reach out to me via email if you have any questions or need anything throughout the next 6 weeks. So I got this picture up here because that's Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I was born and raised. Lived in Phoenix for most of my life until shortly after high school when I joined the United States Marine Corps. When I was in the Marines, I was loving my job. I figured, I was 18 years old when I joined, and I'm going to be here for 20 years and then retire because my job was pretty awesome. I was a trumpet player in the Marine Corps band. And so we got to travel around and play all kinds of different styles of music for people. And that's all I ever wanted to do was just be a musician, making music and having fun. So getting a guaranteed paycheck on the 1st and 15th of every month was pretty incredible and was really enjoying that. And decided to try to fast track my career and go on a special duty assignment, which was to be a security guard at an American embassy overseas. And before I could get over there, I was on vacation and I got injured and severed my hamstring in my right leg. And so I got a medical discharge from the Marine Corps and had to kind of start all over again. And like most people in America, if you don't know what you want to do with the rest of your life, I decided, well, I'm going to take the GI Bill and go back to college and try to figure it out. So I went to Arizona State University, moved back in with my parents. That was lots of fun. And started going to take classes and met my wife, got married. It was kind of a whirlwind time. And I finally graduated with a bachelor's degree in communications with an emphasis in philosophy, rhetoric, and media studies, and a minor in American history. I then went back and got a teaching certification so that I could be a high school history teacher. While I was in the interview process for that, they told me that I would have to teach a section of government and economics, to which I told them I've never even taken an economics class, so you don't want me to teach that course. And the principal, I'll never forget it, she says, well, John, we have a textbook and you seem like a smart guy. I'm sure you'll figure it out. And that was my introduction to economics, was being forced to teach it to high school students out of a really terrible high school textbook. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I started to take some classes and attend some workshops and things to try to figure out how to better teach economics. And as I started taking more and more classes, I got into economics and realized, I really enjoy this. So I was able to get a scholarship to the University of Delaware. And so I went off to grad school to the University of Delaware, where I was part of a cohort of 25 people from all over the world. I had friends from China and Japan and Canada and South Africa and Romania, just kind of from all over. And we went through that program and really enjoyed it. So while I was in the Delaware program, I got recruited to come to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and work at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, where I'm now a full-time senior lecturer in the Department of Economics and Finance, and I run the Center for Economic Education there. So again, I'm from out west, so when I'm not here, right, when summertime comes around or any breaks that I have, I try to get out west and have as much fun as I possibly can. So I got some pictures here of Sedona, Arizona, and Zion National Park. And this summer, we'll be taking the family out to Yellowstone, maybe hitting Glacier National Park if we have time, since I spent a summer in Glacier National Park and a summer in Grand Teton National Park when I was in college working. And so I wanted to show my kids that area of the country. So here's my family, my beautiful wife. We've been married now for 26 years. And we have 4 children ranging from sophomore in high school to 4th grade. So it keeps us pretty busy. But I love love each and every one of them and try to spend as much time with them as I can. So again, when I'm not teaching, I'm busy with these guys and busy trying to travel as much as I possibly can. So that's a little bit about me. I'll hopefully get to know you guys as you participate in the Meet Your Classmates discussion board. So if you haven't looked at the modules yet and seen what is due this week, one of the things you're going to do is a discussion board posting introducing yourself to your classmates. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so let's jump in here and talk about what economics is. Now, when I talk to a lot of people, when I ask them what they think economics is all about, they think it's about money, it's about math, it's about numbers, right? And for many people, that's boring. And for other people, that's really interesting. So it just depends on who you are. But I want to tell you that economics is not just about money, math, and numbers, right? So, like, we're going to talk about money, but it turns out money isn't really as important as what the money can get you. So economists look past the money and look at the actual things that we buy. And money is just a way of sort of representing that stuff. And we use math and we use numbers to try to explain the economy and understand the economy, but that's not primarily doing economics or what economics is about. So what is it about? If it's not about money, math, and numbers, economics is all about choices. Now, that might surprise some of you, especially if you've never taken an economics class before, but economics is a social science. That is, we are like psychology and sociology more than we're like physics and stuff. So, as economists, we're trying to study human behavior and explain why people do what they do, right? We're trying to understand the choices that people make and trying to actually build models where we can predict the choices that people might make. So that's what economics really is all about at its base level, is about studying the choices that people make. Now, when we're looking at more of like a textbook sort of definition of economics, it might be something like this. Economics is the study of how humans choose to use scarce resources to achieve personal and social goals. So let's break that down for a moment. Number one, it's the study of people, right? So it's human beings that are choosing, right? That's what we're interested in. We're not studying animals. Animals are not necessarily making choices in the same way we do. They're responding to instincts, right? And so we're looking at people, and individual people are really, really important because your individual choices are going to impact and influence what happens all around you. Now, what kinds of choices are you making that we're interested in? Well, it turns out that we live in a world of scarcity. That is, there's not enough resources for everybody to be able to have everything that they want. So what we have to do then is we have to make choices about what we're going to do with the scarce resources that we have access to. And ultimately, we're making these choices because we're trying to achieve some sort of goal, whether that goal is for ourselves or for our society, right? We're using these resources to do something to further our goals. And so when we're looking at people's choices, we want to understand why you're making those choices, but we also want to help people make better choices so that we can use fewer resources and get more out of them. Because the more we can get with those scarce resources, the more goals we can achieve for more people over time. So this is probably a good time to pause for a moment and talk to you about a 4-letter word in economics, and that is the word need. We use the word need all the time, right? So what kinds of things do you need? Well, I hear my daughter telling me all the time, I need a cell phone, Daddy. My son, Joseph, was telling me, Daddy, I need new shoes, right? I'm sitting here thinking the other day, I need a nap. so we do use this word need all the time, but we use it pretty frivolously, right? Like, are those things really what we need? Well, if you had the JA person come into your kindergarten class and talk to you about needs versus wants, what they were really trying to do was trying to tell you that, there's some things that are more important than other things, right? So when we talk about needs, right, these things typically boil down to food, water, and shelter, right? These are the things that we need to survive. So when we think about this, though, when we're trying to think about those sorts of things, we say, all right, we need food. All right, great. So if I give you two options and I say you can choose ramen noodles or you can choose steak, right? Pick whichever one you need. Well, they're both food. Do you need either of them? Well, reality, when you go to choose, you're choosing which one you want, not which one you need, right? They both will satisfy the need of food for survival, right? So if you want to live, you need to eat. At least eventually you will need to eat, right? So you can eat either one of these and stay alive for a little while longer. But when you go to make a choice, we don't choose based on what we need. We choose based on what we want because we have options, right? So you need shelter. Fine, there's all kinds of shelter that we could choose, everything from a tent to a mansion and all kinds of things in between. So when you go to get shelter, you choose what shelter you're going to have. You're not choosing based on a need, you're choosing based on which one you want. Right? And then we think about something to drink. Okay. Right? Do you need Coca-Cola or do you need a beer? Well, it might depend, right? Is it Friday? Is it a payday? Have I had a good day or a bad day? Right? All of these things kind of go into our choice of which one we want in that given moment. But right, we said that the need is actually water. All right, fine. So we've got multiple different types of water out there. Which one do you need? Well, again, any one of them will satisfy the need of water for survival, but we're not choosing based on what we need, right? We're choosing based on what we want. So let's just take this idea of needs and just throw it out the window because in economics, right, we're studying people's choices, and our choices are not based on what we need, but based on what we want. So whenever you hear somebody say, "I had no choice, I had to," right, or I needed to do this thing, just know, right? That's not necessarily true in an economic sense. They chose to do that thing because that's what they wanted, right? Mostly because it was probably the best alternative that they had as an option. So needs would be something for which there is no alternative. And in most cases, there's always an alternative. It's just that not all those alternatives are good alternatives, right? So even with like water, do you need it? Well, there is an alternative, and that is no water. That's not a good alternative, especially after a few days, right? So when we say, "Oh, I needed to do it," no, like, you just wanted to do it really, really bad if you wanted to survive. So the need is something for which there is zero alternatives. As economists, we would argue there's always an alternative. What we want to do is try to give people more alternatives, more options, and better options when they are trying to make their choices. So a want then is a little bit different, right? A want is something that people choose to get depending upon what it costs them, right? Like, will I get one thing or another? Well, it depends. How much do I have to give up in order to have these things? Especially if they're both of equal value to me, if I want them both equally, right, they will satisfy me at the same level, then I will choose the one that's cheapest, right? I'm gonna choose the one where I have to give up the least to have it. So wants will change and wants will differ depending upon the sacrifice that's required in order to obtain them. All right. So, one of the assumptions that we have as economists is that people are rational, okay? That all the decisions we make are rational decisions. People aren't stupid, they're not pathetic, they're not sociopaths. People are rational. So that's one of the things that sort of differs economics from, say, psychology, right? In psychology, the assumption is everybody's crazy. The only question is, what kind of crazy are you? And we're going to ask you a bunch of questions and look through this DSM-5 manual, and we're going to find out exactly what type of crazy you are. And so that's psychology. In economics, we say nobody's crazy. Everybody is rational, okay? All of our decisions are rational, at least to an economist. So when you come across somebody like this, it might be really hard to think like an economist and say, this is a rational decision. A Meaning this person did this to themselves on purpose, right? This was a rational decision that they did because they wanted to do this. You and I might not want to do that. We might make different choices, and that would be rational as well. Right. So is this a rational decision? Even though it might look crazy, it might look stupid, whatever thoughts ran through your mind when you first saw this person, right? As an economist, we have to take a step back and sort of, downplay our judgmental attitude at times and say, okay, that seems crazy to me, but as an economist, that is a rational decision. Okay? What about these folks? We got this lady here slapping this guy, right? Why would you want to do that, right? Is that a rational decision? The answer is yes. Every choice, every decision is a rational decision. Now, why is this guy just standing there taking it and not trying to run away or block or anything or dodge it? Well, that's a rational decision as well, right? These people are acting rationally, even if we might disagree and say, violence is not a good way of solving our problems. These people, both of them, are being rational. Now, what about these folks? They are standing in line in the rain. Is that a rational decision? The answer is, as an economist, yes. And why is this guy reading the newspaper instead of using it as shelter? Who knows? But it is a rational decision. Right? That's it. Economics. People are rational. Our assumption starts with people are rational. Therefore, all the choices we make are rational decisions. This is probably one of the hardest things for people to grasp when trying to think like an economist. And one of the reasons why people often don't like to think like an economist, because they look at people making decisions and say, oh my gosh, that's just crazy or stupid. But the economist says, no, that's a rational decision for that person. So it might help if I explain what we mean by rational. So when we say someone is being rational, we simply mean that your behavior is consistent with what you want. Right? Whatever it is that you want, your decisions and your behavior are going to be whatever it is you think it's going to take to get you one step closer to your goal. So is this person being rational? The answer is yes. The only question is, what do they want? Because we can assume they did all of these tattoos and piercings and stuff because they wanted something. And they thought, this is going to get me what I want. Now, what is that, right? What is it that they actually want? We don't really know for sure, right? But we can speculate on any number of things that they might want that would cause somebody to do this, right? I've heard people say, well, maybe it's a cultural thing and they think this is beautiful. All right, maybe. I'm not willing to say no to that. I'm not going to discount that as an option potentially. I personally don't know what type of culture that is. And if you do know, please let me know. I'd love to find out. But we can assume that that person did it maybe because of cultural reasons. Okay, maybe. Maybe they just wanted the shock value. They just wanted to shock people every time they walked in the room. Well, that would work, right? So maybe they're just trying to get attention from folks, right? That would work for sure. Maybe they're a masochist and they just like pain. And so they're, they're putting all these piercings and stuff because they enjoy that. Maybe they just have bad taste, right? And they think that's beautiful when the rest of us might think, no, that's not beautiful, right? So again, we don't know for sure what that person wants, especially without talking to them and thinking through it. But our assumption is they are a rational person. And so they did this on purpose because they think that's going to get them closer to what they want. All right, so what about these folks, right? What do they want? Well, who knows, right? Again, without talking to them, we don't know for sure, but our assumption is they think this behavior is going to get them closer to what they want. So she's slapping this guy. there could be any number of reasons why you do that, right? Maybe you're angry and you're just lashing out. Maybe he's saying things she doesn't like. Maybe he cheated on her and she's angry. All right. Maybe he's a stalker and she's trying to get him to go away. Maybe he simply had a mosquito on his cheek and she was just trying to help save his life from malaria. I mean, we don't really know. But we can tell because she's rational that she's doing it on purpose and she thinks this is going to get her what she wants. Now, why is the guy just standing there taking it? Well, again, because he thinks this is going to get him what he wants. Right? Maybe he's taking it because he knows he was wrong and he deserves the punishment. Right? He's going to let her lash out at him so she can get it out of her system, and maybe she can forgive him and move on with the relationship. Maybe, right? We don't really know for sure, but we know, or we assume, that they are being rational in their behavior. So these folks who are standing in line in the rain, is there something that you would be willing to stand in line in the rain for? Excuse me. Maybe some sort of concert event of some kind, maybe some sort of giveaway that's happening, right? We've seen lines like this whenever the new iPhone would come out, years ago, people would be lining up for outside the stores. And well, turns out in this particular picture, they're standing in line to vote. This is from an election several years ago, and there was a large turnout, and they were just waiting in line so that they could vote. And maybe this guy's reading the paper because, well, he doesn't have very much hair to have to worry about anyway, and maybe he's an undecided voter and he's still trying to figure out who he's going to vote for when he gets to the front of the line, or maybe he's just bored because they've been standing in line for too long. Whatever the reason is, we know that there is a reason, and the behavior of these people is consistent with what they want. So again, the assumption is we are all rational human beings, and our behavior is always consistent with what we want. Now, that being said, sometimes what we say we want and our behavior don't line up. So when we see that kind of a situation, economists are sort of like your grandpa, right? Or your coaches that maybe you heard from that said, what you do speaks more loudly than what you say. Right? I'm going to believe your actions before I believe your words. So we look at revealed preferences as economists, right? We're not going to go do a survey and ask you, like, what would you do if you won the lottery and you got $200 million? Well, psychologists and sociologists have done these sorts of studies, and we find lots of people say, oh, I'm going to donate a bunch of money to charities, or I'm going to buy gifts for other people and these sorts of things. Well, economists are very skeptical about that because, again, what we say is one thing, but what we do might be completely different. And so we'll go after the fact and just follow people and say, okay, what did you actually do if you won the lottery? Because it's one thing to sort of imagine what you would do. And so when you're trying to imagine that situation, you're answering the question based on the kind of person you want to be. Right? You're saying, I wish that I was the kind of person who, when I won the lottery, I would give a lot of it to charity. But the reality is, when we look at most people who win the lottery, what they do is they just go and they blow it and they're broke within a few years. So what we believe as economists is that we can't really trust what you say all the time. So whenever you see your behavior not lining up with what you say, right, economists would say, look at the behavior. The behavior is telling you the truth. That's what you want to look at and say, okay, if that's what my behavior is doing, then what is it that I really want? Because it might not be what I say that I want. And so then we can start to get to the root of the issue and say, okay, well, how do I either change what I really want to get my behavior to line up with what I want to do? Or maybe just, try to figure out, as many people, they don't know what they want. And so that can actually help us. Let's look at our behavior. Let's look at the way we spend our money, the way we spend our time, and the kinds of things that we do, and say, what does that tell you about yourself? And what does that tell you about maybe what it is that you want out of life? And we can then start to move forward and pursue those goals rationally. Right? So we're all rational human beings. Our behavior is always consistent with what we want. Now, of course, that being said, what we want might change over time, right? It's natural for what we want to change. So take a look at these two guys here. Hopefully, I'm sharing the sound correctly. I think I clicked the right buttons and stuff. If for some reason you don't hear the sound, please let me know so that next time I can make sure I've got the right settings on here, but I think that I do. So these two guys, they are hitchhiking their way through Europe, trying to decide, right, what they're going to do with their lives.
So finally figured out my major.
Oh yeah?
Ceramics.
Nice.
It's not even so much a major, it's more like a life calling.
Like a Zen thing.
Yeah, it's like me and the wheel, and the water and the clay. People really need ceramics badly.
I was in the museum like not too long ago. You know what it was filled with? Ceramics.
I'm like a poet with earth.
Right, an earth poet.
An earth poet.
Cool, man.
I want to make plates. I want to make mugs.
Yeah, man, you should make those mugs. Make those mugs, man. Do it.
Well, you know what? I will.
Oh, dude.
Buongiorno. Grazie. Thank you. Thank you.
You can always minor in ceramics.
Yeah.
The Range Rover by Land Rover.
Okay, so what does this guy want? Well, he says, right, he wants to be a poet with earth, right? He wants to make plates and mugs and all kinds of different ceramics, right? And that's fine, right? If that's what you want to do with your life, fantastic. Go be the best darn mug maker that you can be, right? But something changes. By the end, he wants something different. Why? Because he was introduced to some new information, right? He's living his life and now he has a new experience and he realizes there's a thing called a Land Rover. And he didn't know that and he wasn't aware of that as an option. And now what he really wants is a Land Rover. And so he realizes, if I pursue this dream of making ceramics my career, I'm probably not going to get the Land Rover. So maybe I'll just make that my hobby and I'll go get a job doing something else so I can get what I really want now, which is this Land Rover. So again, when we're thinking about being rational, our behavior is always going to be consistent with what we want, but that might change over time as we get introduced to new alternatives and new options. So again, economists want to make sure when you're making a choice, you have the best possible options that you can, because we know as we look around the world today, many people are facing really bad alternatives when they're making their choices. Okay, so another thing about economics, another assumption that we make is that you are a self-interested individual. Now, that doesn't mean that you are selfish, however, and this is a common misconception. Many people think that economists think that you are only motivated by money and you are a selfish, greedy person, and that's why you do everything that you do. Well, that's not true. And it couldn't be true, right? I mean, you do things for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with money, right? We do things out of jealousy and out of spite and out of love and out of kindness, right? So when we go out and do these things, right, we're not always being selfish. You may or may not be selfish. I don't know. I'll have to look at your behavior to figure that out. But I'm going to assume every single one of you is self-interested. For example, most people know Mother Teresa. She spent her life serving the poor and helping people around the world. And so a lot of people, though, I find out in Indiana, at least east of the Mississippi, many people don't know who John Muir is. John Muir was the founder of the Sierra Club. He was an environmentalist. He's the reason why we have Yosemite National Park out in California, because he helped to lobby Congress to protect the environment. Nobody that I know would say that Mother Teresa is a selfish person. Nobody I know would say that John Muir is a selfish person. Right? They both spent their lives trying to do things for other people. And yet, as an economist, I'm going to argue they were both self-interested individuals. Because all that means is that you are more interested in the things that interest you than you are interested in the things that interest other people, right? Yourself and the things that you are interested in are more important to you than other things are. So for example, if you had gone to Mother Teresa and said, hey, we would like to build this hospital, but in order to do that, we've got to chop down some of this wilderness area here to make room and get the resources we need to build the hospital. Mother Teresa is going to say, absolutely, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. Why? Because she's interested in helping people who are sick and needy, and she thinks this is a way of achieving that, and that's what she's interested in. That's her motivation. Okay? Now, if you'd given John Muir the same option, said, hey, we can build this hospital, we just have to cut down some of this wilderness to get the resources and the space to do it. Well, John Muir might say, well, let's not do the hospital, right? Let's protect the wilderness area instead. Again, not being selfish, but being self-interested. He's more interested in saving the environment because that's what he cares about. So while Mother Teresa and John Muir, neither one of them is being selfish, they are both being self-interested. Okay, so economists argue that everybody is self-interested. Some people are selfish, but we don't assume everyone is selfish, right? So you are self-interested individuals, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just depends on what you're interested in, right? How you're going to go about pursuing those things. Now that's where we can start making moral judgments about whether or not you're a good person or not. Depends on what you're going to try to pursue. So we're all interested in things that interest us more than we are interested in the things that interest other people. All right, so let's start jumping into some details here about how economists evaluate the choices that people are making and how we go about trying to figure out why they make those decisions and how we might help people make better decisions, or how we might predict what kinds of decisions people might make. In that, we know that incentives matter. Your choices will be influenced heavily by whatever incentives you are facing, because we all face different incentives every day. So what are incentives? Well, incentives are just rewards or punishments that are associated with any particular choice that you're making, right? So the proverbial carrot or the stick, right? I can get the donkey to go forward by hanging a carrot in front of it, giving it a positive incentive, or I can get the donkey to move forward by hitting it with a stick and giving it a negative incentive, right? So either way, right, these incentives will get people to do different things. And so the question is, what's the best incentive to use? Well, it depends on the person and how what motivates them. But depending upon whether you're seeing a positive or negative incentive, that will influence the choice or decision that you decide to make. So we know that human choices are influenced in predictable ways when we change the incentives that they are facing. Let me give you an example here. This person here is in charge of a company, and he faces the same problem that every business manager in the world faces. And that is, how do I motivate my people to actually stay on task and do their work? Right? How do I get you to use company time for company work rather than playing around on your phone and scrolling Facebook endlessly all day, right? I want you to be on task and actually doing things. So he got this great idea on how to change the incentives to get his people to be on task more.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside the box thinking.
Hey, buddy.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mesh!
And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard. That ain't new, baby.
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Janice.
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family.
You can't hide, baby.
He fits right in here.
That's a long distance call, Doug.
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You want to play games, King? Well, when it's game time, it's pain time, baby.
All right. So here we've got Terry Tate, who gets hired to come around and tackle people anytime they are not on task. Well, that's a pretty big negative incentive, right? And so what we know is that if you hired someone to tackle people who are not on task, we would predict that we will get more people working on task than we would otherwise. Now, the problem with that is we can look at these incentives and then think to ourselves, oh, great. If I just get the incentives right, I can influence people to do whatever it is that I want them to do, that I can manipulate people to get the outcomes that I desire. Well, that's a very dangerous idea, right? Especially we look back throughout history about people who've tried to do that. It hasn't ended well always. So the problem with that is that we know some people will act the way that we predict, but we don't know who exactly they will be and exactly how many of them there will be. So for example, think about yourself. If Terry Tate worked in your office, would you be more likely to be on task? Probably, right? But if Terry Tate worked in your office, would you also be more likely to quit and go work somewhere else? That we know some people will do as well. So there's this potential for an unintended consequence where we put this incentive in place to try to keep people on task, but what we end up with instead is a shortage of workers because they all quit to go work somewhere else. So while we know that we can influence in predictable ways the way people might behave, we can't exactly predict precisely who's going to respond and who's not, and how many people are going to do that exactly the way that we would anticipate. Let's think of some other examples. What if we said we were in a face-to-face class and we said that class attendance had no effect on your grade? Well, what would we anticipate people will do? We would anticipate that people will be more likely to skip class. Right? The cost of skipping class has been lowered. It doesn't affect your grade, so there's no negative consequence for choosing not to come. So I typically put this in my syllabus when I have a face-to-face class, that they get points for participation in the course. And so that affects their grade, and gives them an incentive then to come to class. And I want them to, because I want them to learn. And if they come to class, they're more likely to learn the material. What if we said that all students got the same grade no matter what their test scores were? Well, we've actually done studies on this, and we find that the average score for those classes is lower than it is in classes where they're given the reward that they earned, right? They get the grade that they got, not what everyone else got. Because if you're getting the same grade no matter what, why would you study so hard? Now, this is a key point. We would expect that some people will study less and not work as hard because they're not being rewarded for their efforts. But we also know there are some people out there that they're going to study just as hard either way. Because for them, the motivation isn't the grade, it's the knowledge that they're getting. Because let's be honest, what is the grade supposed to represent? It's supposed to represent what you know. And the reason why you shoot for good grades is so that you can know more, so you can go on and get a better job and be able to have more skills and abilities, right? So if the grade is taken away, ask yourself, would that affect your motivation? Would that change your incentives? Or would you be one of the people who says, you know what, I'm going to keep studying no matter what, because I know ultimately this is all about the knowledge that I'm going to get, not necessarily about the grades that I'm going to receive. What if we said all students who play the tuba get a full ride scholarship to college? Well, we would expect an increase in the number of people who are playing the tuba. But that doesn't mean that every single person is going to start playing the tuba. There's probably a number of you who would not pick up the tuba and start playing it, even if we offered you a scholarship to college. So we would predict, right, that some people are going to do it, but we don't know exactly how many people and who exactly they might be. What if we said that all students had to rise and greet the instructor enthusiastically, or they failed the course? Well, some people, we would predict, will just stand up and applaud and greet the instructor enthusiastically. And we know that some others would not, because they're like, well, forget you and your ego. And some people might quit and drop the class and go try to take it from a different instructor. It all depends on the person. So a true story for you. When I was in college, I had a history professor who told us at the beginning of the semester, if you give me a standing ovation at the end of every class, there will be no final exam this semester. We said, are you serious? He said, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, of course, what did we do? We responded to that incentive in a predictable way. At the end of every class, we erupted and started clapping and cheering and giving him a standing ovation. And we did this for every class. And then about halfway through the semester, the department chair comes in, sits in the back of the class, is watching the course, and at the end, we erupt and we're giving him a standing ovation and everything. And as we're packing up, we noticed that the department chair walked up to our professor, handed him a $100 bill, and left. And we thought, what in the world is going on here? What was that about? So our instructor told us that over the summer, they had been talking about who was a better teacher. And he told him that he could prove that he was a better teacher because he could elicit a standing ovation from his students at will. And he told his department chair, right, I bet you $100, just come in any day next semester. Doesn't matter which day, just come in any day. And when you come in the door, I'll see you. And I will know that I have to turn it on and be so good in my lecture that I have to get a standing ovation from my students. And if I can do that, you owe me $100. So, of course, he won the bet, got the $100. But how did he do it? It wasn't because he was such a fabulous professor. I mean, he was a nice guy, but like, you know, come on, like who gives their professors a standing ovation? It doesn't happen. So, but he got the incentives right. He got us to do what he wanted us to do by changing the incentives and giving us a motivation. And of course, we had no final exam that semester. He was good to his word, so it was totally worth it. All right, let me give you one more example about incentives. Because remember, we change the incentives, we can predict how we expect people to change their behavior, but there are often these unintended consequences that we don't necessarily foresee. So take a look at this. This is a video of explaining an economist trying to potty train his daughter. Check it out.
We started off in a normal interview pose, and now you're lying down, swinging a pillow around. What's going on here? If I give you a slice of juicy fruit, will you say whatever I want?
No.
No. Wait, I heard that you would do anything for a slice of juicy fruit.
No matter how smart you are, and economists think they're pretty smart, you come up with some incentive scheme that you think is the perfect one to entice exactly the behavior you have in mind. And you set an army of people with nothing to do all day but to figure out how to beat that incentive scheme, and they absolutely will beat
tell
it.
them about Amanda.
It's such a long story. They can't possibly. I mean, I'll give you an example. So we were trying to potty train my daughter, Amanda, and my wife went in the books and did all the things you're supposed to do, but Amanda had been potty trained, and then she just decided she wouldn't use the toilet anymore. And this went on for months. My wife was frustrated. And I said, I'm an economist. I understand incentives. Let me take over. And I got right down on Amanda's level on my knees, and I knew what she liked more than anything else. She was about 3 years old. We're M&Ms. And I said, if you go pee-pee in the potty, I'll give you a bag of M&Ms. She said, right now? And I said, yeah. I said, okay. And she walked over to the potty. She went to the bathroom. I turned to my wife, and I said, let the economist handle it, you know. And indeed, for the next couple of days, it worked to perfection. Every time she had to go to the bathroom, she announced it. She went to the bathroom. There was a lot of fanfare. We gave her the M&Ms. Everything was going great. But 3 days later, she said, well, I have to go to the bathroom. Followed her. She went, trickled out a few drops. I gave her the M&Ms. She got off. She said, I have to go again. She sat down in the potty. She trickled a few more drops. I gave her the M's. Got to go again. Basically, in 3 days, she'd gone from someone who could do absolutely no bladder control to being so, so professional at it that she could control the flow completely at a whim, and had a 3-year-old had basically come up with a way to beat the incentive scheme I had developed within 3 days that I never in a million years could have imagined. Okay, and if you can't, if an economist can't trick a 3-year-old for more than 3 days, what hope does economists have of tricking the whole country of people for even 3 hours?
So that's kind of the beauty of incentives. You don't really know what works, and governments think they know what works, and they spend a huge amount of resources establishing incentives. And they're going to do all these things that seem to make a lot of sense and that sound really great and may work out well in some measure, but they're going to backfire in so many different ways that we can't predict yet. And people will laugh and people will cry, and that's what incentives are.
Okay, so once again, we know that people's choices will be influenced by the incentives that they face. So when we look at people's decisions, we have to understand they might have made that decision because of the incentives they were facing. Right? So even though you might have made a different choice than that person, right, that's probably because you face a different set of incentives. So trying to manipulate people, though, to do exactly what we want oftentimes backfires. We try to put these incentives in place. We'll get some people to respond the way we want, but there'll be a whole bunch of other people who do something completely different and some things that we would never anticipate them doing, like the little girl here in the video. Okay, so that's all I have for you as far as just sort of introductory stuff. Welcome to microeconomics. We're going to go deeper into these concepts over the next 6 weeks. So what do you have to do this week? Well, number one, there is a course preparation quiz. I saw on Canvas that a few of you had already taken that. So thank you for those of you who are already working on it. But you want to finish that this week. You also will have every week a Tech Live reflection that you have to do. So you got to watch these videos and turn in a reflection of, one, what did you learn, right? Like, just tell me, like, what did we talk about in the video? Tell me that show me that you watched the video, and then tell me what you found to be the most interesting part of it. What did you learn? What questions do you have at the end of watching the video? Anything like that. Should just be like a paragraph or so. That's perfectly fine for the Tech Live reflections. And then lastly, this week, you want to participate in the Meet Your Classmates discussion board. So please go to the discussion board and post there and tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, moving forward, as we go throughout the class, every week we're going to kind of get into a rhythm of having certain things due every week. So number one thing that we're going to have due every week is a discussion board posting. Okay, so in future weeks, right, we're going to want you to have read the discussion board and understood the question and responded to that with your first initial discussion posting by Thursday of every week. Okay, so you have until Thursday to post your initial comments on the discussion board. That way, people then have time to read all of those and then respond to at least 2 of your classmates with a substantive response, please, not a "that was great" sort of comment, but something that says, you read it, you reflected on it, did you agree or disagree with what they said, something like that. Now, those second discussion board postings, the 2 for your responses, those will be due by the end of the day on Sunday each week. All right, so Thursday is when your first initial discussion board postings are going to be due every week. Everything else that we do is going to be due on Sunday night. So you've got the whole week to get through it. So you will have a Tech Live reflection that you have to do every single week. Those will be due by Sunday evening each week. Our Tech Live sessions will be at the same time each week. They're going to be on Tuesdays from 4 to 5 p.m. And I know that doesn't work for everybody. I apologize. I had to kind of just work around a few things with my own schedule to make that work. Then we'll also have a multiple choice quiz and a short answer quiz. Okay, so each week, look for 2 different quizzes, multiple choice quiz and a short answer quiz. So you'll want to do those. And again, the Tech Live reflection, the quizzes, and your last discussion board postings all due by Sunday each week. All right, that's it for this week. I hope you guys get off to a good start. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. You can message me directly through Canvas. Using that, you can email me. You can text to the cell phone number that I posted in the chat that I'm hoping you can see what that is. But please keep me up to date if you have any questions or need any help at all. That's what I'm here for. So with that, have a great day, and I look forward to looking at your work later. Thanks.